It's not on here.
Hey YouTubers, thank you so much for joining us. We're doing a great giveaway during this holiday season, and I'm so excited to be giving away Carrie Vicentainer's book, Wild Mama. We have the author in the studio with us right now. Carrie, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Paul.
I'm very glad to have you. Now let's talk about the accolades first. Your book is the #1 family travel guide on Amazon.com currently.
It was, yeah, it was. It's crazy. I can't believe it.
Yeah, so what does that feel like whenever you see your book atop one of the rankings?
It feels surreal. It feels surreal. I can't believe it's happening. It's been wonderful because it means that people send me notes and I get to connect with readers in a really authentic way, and so yeah, it means a lot of excitement and a lot of great connection with other people.
Well, I really enjoyed the book. I'm not all the way through it yet. However, right as soon as I picked it up, as a new parent, it resonated with me immediately. I'm a writer, you're a writer. When you first had your child or children, as a writer, did you know that there was going to be a project that came out of it?
Not at all. I was writing sort of edgy fiction at the time, and I really had no desire to write about motherhood and all that that would mean for me. But then it happened. You know, I had my first child, and I started having these experiences, these struggles, this fear about being a good parent and what it meant to raise a child. And you know, when you're sort of in that writer's mind, those things then end up on paper or on my laptop. And I started exploring that more. I started going deeper into my own experiences and found some things that were transformative.
Wild Mama's one woman's quest to live her best life, escape traditional parenthood, and travel the world. Tell us about escaping traditional parenthood.
You know, this came up for us, my husband and I, sort of around the time we became new parents, because we'd come into our own with adventure. We were doing a lot of outdoor adventure in Colorado. We were traveling internationally, and we didn't want parenthood to change that for us. Yet we knew that adventuring with children is not really in line with American cultural norms, and if we were going to continue to do that, it was going to mean swimming upstream against that.
Yeah.
And so we just dug in our heels and kept going with it. And it's certainly had its challenges, but we've also forged a really fun life for our family that's you know, different than what a lot of others are doing, but at the same time just feels really right to us.
So I have a new child, and I don't want to travel internationally with him. I just have no desire. It sounds like it would be so difficult that it could potentially take the enjoyment out of the international travel. I mean, we're just traveling for Thanksgiving coming up this week, and I'm somewhat horrified.
It's so hard.
About flying with.
Oh, well, I addressed that in the book. So, you know, our first trip was air travel to Florida. And, you know, it was kind of a cushy thing. You know, we weren't going to a backcountry yurt. We weren't going backpacking. But I was terrified of flying on an airplane with my child. And the anxiety was just sort of hard for me to get my head around. So I get that, you know, it is, you know, it's those things that were sort of no-brainer before you had kids. I mean, you don't even think about getting on an airplane unless you have airplane anxiety. But, you know, most of us just sort of treat that trip from A to B as, you know, not even really part of the adventure. But then once you have kids, it's a whole different thing. And it is scary to overcome those obstacles. And they're real, you know, they're real obstacles.
So how did it influence the enjoyment of the adventures, you know, compared to the adventures before motherhood to the adventures after motherhood? How did it influence it?
Yeah, we kind of took it slow, and so on that trip on the airplane, we were having really good luck, and my husband and I were like, ooh, maybe this isn't going to be as bad as we think. And then we had to do a layover, and then we were in O'Hare, and everything just fell apart. And our kid was that kid on the airplane screaming. We were unable to calm him, and it was just, you know, you just feel bad for the other passengers.
Yeah.
And for you. However, in the end, it all worked out. I realized that the passengers around us were mostly, tuned into their own story. They were listening to headphones. They were doing other things, and people weren't sort of looking at us with these, these angry looks that I was expecting. And in the end, it was a really lovely vacation. And when I had the chance to reflect on it afterwards, I realized that it's sort of all part of it. Getting through your first car trip, getting through your first airplane ride, just taking things one step at a time is really what it's all about when you become a new parent, because it's all so new.
We've been connected on Facebook for a little while just because I think we're both writers and in the media in northern Colorado. And I remember before your book came out seeing a post of you and your family in Costa Rica for an extended period of time.
That was rural Mexico.
Rural Mexico.
Yep,
yeah.
Close.
Tell us about that.
So for the last 4 years, we have taken a trip to a little town called Yalapa, which is accessible only by boat from Puerto Vallarta.
Wow.
And it's this village that has no cars, so you hike or walk everywhere. It's sort of where the jungle meets the beach, so it's hiking in the jungle, living open air to the jungle, with the beach, a calm cove right there. And that has been incredible, and it's sort of changed how I view travel. In terms of, we had the ability during that time to just slow down because we were there for a longer period of time. And
how long?
2 months.
Yeah.
Each time. And to just sort of soak in the experience, immerse ourselves in the culture, and interesting things happen that might not have happened if we'd been on a week-long or 2-week-long vacation. Like, we got invited to some children's birthday parties. And so our kids got to, they got to hit like 6 piñatas in a row at a birthday party and, do some dancing with the local children. And it's been incredible in terms of how I've seen it shaping my kids' lives.
So, whenever you had kids, it seemed like you decided, listen, I'm not going to stop being adventurous. I'm not going to stop traveling. And I'm wondering if there was like a mission statement that you formed in your head and how it's evolved with real world applications, with actually going through with it.
Yeah,
Is
that's
it any
a great question.
any different now than it was then?
Yeah, it is different now. I think that when I was pregnant with our first child, he's 8 now, my husband and I sat down and we made an adventure list. We're like, we're gonna skip the baby moon because it's expensive and we want to like save our money for after the kid's born. We're gonna come up with this list of things we're gonna do after kids. And when I look back at that list, I realized that we have been able to do a lot of those things. All of this requires more effort than it did beforehand. It's not, you don't just sort of spontaneously take off into the mountains. You got to pack a bag for the kids. You got to make sure they're going to be safe. And there's all these things to think about. And there are moments where we're like, man, this is just too hard. We should just stay home and go to the park instead. But in the end, when you do pull all that stuff together, give yourself a little time to plan and do it, it's been incredible, both for the kids, for me as an individual, and for us as a family bonding.
How do the kids feel about it?
They love it. We are actually about to leave for 3 months in Costa Rica at the end of December. My son's in 3rd grade this year. This is the first year I've really noticed he's rooted in his school community. He goes to a public school in Fort Collins. And I wondered if he was going to start not wanting to do these things at some point. And so I asked him, I said, Jake, are you gonna, how are you feeling about leaving your friends and your teacher and your school this year? And he said, I am gonna miss that, but it's worth it. And I think that sort of sums it up right there, that they see, my daughter's in kindergarten, so it's her first year of school, but they see how rich these experiences are for us, and so they get excited about them.
Carrie Vicentainer joining us. She's the author of Wild Mama. It is available in bookstores and on the internet now. So what have you been hearing about the book?
That part has been really cool. I've been getting notes from people through Facebook. Sometimes people find my email address through my website. From women who found that various themes resonated. So, for example, one woman wrote to me and said, my husband and I have been trying to decide when to have kids, And, you know, we were nervous about this. We're nervous about the same things you were, about giving up our sort of pre-baby lives. And she read the book while she was on a solo trip in Rome and said, this is just the message I needed. And so that was neat. And then others have really connected with some of the struggles I describe in the book. So I experienced postpartum depression. I felt honestly really terrified after I had my first child. I was so terrified to just even leave the hospital because there were so many things to think about and be watching for,
Yeah.
and all of that. And so others have connected on that level, you know, how we just want to do a good job at all of this, but it can be hard to feel confident in your skills when you're a new parent.
Yeah, I was fairly panicked
Panicked.
when leaving the hospital.
Yeah, you feel like you're transporting this fragile,
Yeah.
you know, thing into the world, and ugh.
Well, I just remember, those little footy blankets that they had at the hospital. I just like gathered as many of those as I could because I was just so horrified of not having enough little blankies for the little guy.
Yeah, and then you're learning how to swaddle the kid, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, should I really swaddle him that tight? And then there's sudden infant death syndrome, and all these things you're supposed to be worried about and watching for, and it's, it's a lot. It's intense.
So, what's the wildest adventure with kids that you have embarked upon?
I think it's probably been those extended trips to rural Mexico, and this year in Costa Rica. We'll be living in the rainforest. When we lived in Mexico, we lived in a little tree house, open air to the jungle, and so that meant that wildlife was right there.
Yeah.
And that's crazy. We didn't see boa constrictors, but they were around, and there's these Mexican raccoons around that sometimes crawl on your roof. And also beautiful birds and
what would you
yeah.
feed them? Like, there's no grocery store there, right?
Well, there's little tiendas.
There's little
and
tiendas,
so, yeah.
but do they? I mean, I that would be one concern. Like, not that they don't have food that's fitting, but it would be unfamiliar and.
Yeah, actually that part I was nervous about, but it worked out way better than I thought. In that, first of all, you can get fresh fish caught that day from a local fisherman. And so we would just, fry that up in a pan. And we didn't have a working oven the first year, so we were dealing with, like, just a little stovetop. And then, the stores do have things, rice and beans. You can get chicken. Believe it or not, we found a nice way to purify vegetables. There's this grapeseed oil we would use to purify the vegetables, so we were able to eat a lot of vegetables and fruits. And although our diet was different than home a little bit, it wasn't actually as different as I thought it might be.
Okay. Okay. Much easier than
than you would think.
Well, yeah. I mean, people eat everywhere. People have kids everywhere.
And there's some really good restaurants in this village, and so it is interesting how things feel like such a barrier in your mind. Like, oh, well, what about eating? What about safety? What about medical care? And then I found that if you just sort of like write down those things on paper and think, okay, so, how are we going to address those? In the end, they might not be as big of a problem as you thought they would be.
Cool. So did you learn a lot from creating the book?
Oh, I learned a ton from creating the book. My background is in genetics and molecular biology, so I had to completely learn how to write. And so I've learned a lot about writing. Certainly have a long way to go there. And it was a really, I've mostly written essays and articles, shorter pieces, and so putting something together into an entire book was scary and a lot of work, and also a really joyful experience. I love writing, and I love that I was able to make a full-length book out of what started off as just travel essays and musings and things.
Do your kids think that you're super cool? Because there's a lot of moms out there that are like, oh,
Wow.
I wish I could be like Carrie. She's so adventurous, and she won't give up the pre-baby life and still have it all. Like, do your kids realize how cool you are?
Well, they're still little, so they
So
they
cool
do,
isn't the thing, yeah.
But I will say that Wild Mama released on the same day, November 3rd, as the book the new Diary of a Wimpy Kid.
Yeah.
And my son, who's 8, was like, well, I guess it's fun to be coming to your book release party, but I kind of wish I was going to that one. So my coolness seems to be, I seem to be on thin ice with that.
Okay. Well, I'll check back when they're teenagers.
Yeah, right.
When
It'll
they
be
understand.
a whole different interview.
They understand what cool is.
Yeah.
Well, you know, if kids go the opposite way as their parents, you're going to have super boring stay-at-home kids, right?
I don't know. My son is a really cautious kid, and we joke that he's going to work in risk management because, I mean, and that's a great job. I think he might be heading in that route. We'll see what happens.
Good. Well, congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
And thanks for your time.